Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 115 of the Not Joanna Eggs podcast. This week, Robin and myself discussed the 2019 Amazon Prime original series Undone, which was produced by Purdy and Raphael Bob-Waksburg of Bojack Horseman fame. We had a great time checking this one out, as it was a much-needed distraction from the current dumpster fire that's been going on in the U.S. I don't know. I am certain that I look as tired as I feel, so we'll leave it at that. Hope you guys dig this one. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't subscribed to us already, please check us out on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Or if you're too cool for that, you can find us on YouTube as well, just by searching for Not Joanna Eggs podcast in the search button. Thanks so much. I want to go pass out now, so I apologize for the delay in getting this one out. I've just been very exhausted lately, like everybody else has. So hope you guys dig this one, and take care. Thank you for listening. Bye. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Not Joanna Eggs podcast. I'm Tracy.
And I'm Robin.
And this week, as both of our brains have been turned into mush, based on, if you can base this around the time that we were recording this, which is November 6th, 2020.
Cheers.
Yep. Maybe just start drinking or continue drinking, who knows. But we figured that since our brains are already kind of congealed into this mass that is on the floor of trying to avoid social media and failing miserably, we decided to approach a show that we had both checked out last year, but it felt appropriate to talk about because it's kind of all about being in a surreal plane of not knowing what the fuck's happening. And it's Undone, which is based around rotoscoping, produced by Purdy and Raphael Bob-Waksburg, both of Bojack Horseman fame. So yeah, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, so let's get into it. So Undone, the broad scope of it sort of is this woman after a car accident starts sort of seeing reality in a sort of fundamentally different way.
Let's just say, like, it's to the point that it's like extremely vivid hallucinations, at least based on our perspective, even though we're seeing things from her eyes. So it seems like all these things are happening from an extremely vivid, like, imaginative, whimsical almost kind of way.
Yeah, well, so this is the thing, and I think this is why I like latch onto it so heavily. Ultimately, for me, the kind of narrative tension or crux of the thing is whether this is real or not, whether it ends up being sort of postmodern. She begins to experience reality in a fundamentally different way, and so, like, if you haven't watched it and you want to avoid spoilers, now is your moment to jump off the boat. But she begins to see her father, who died when she was, 10 or something like that?
I would say, 9 or 10, relatively young.
For some reason, 8 sticks in my mind, but that doesn't seem right. I don't know.
I'm not really sure. Well, so here's the thing. It was Halloween night 2002, because there's a newspaper clipping that comes up later where I paused it to check the year, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so I think we can assume that it's been at least 18 years after the fact of that evening. So
yeah, so that's what we know. So realistically, she's like late 20s, early 30s-ish.
Yeah, I think she's 28. Her name is Alma. I forget what her full name is because she's got one of those hyphenated names that I'm not 100% on.
It's Alma Winograd Diaz.
Yeah, Alma Winograd Diaz.
Winograd is her father's name.
Yeah, her father is Jewish and her mother is Hispanic and I think Mestizo, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which is important to note because that both of her parents' heritage ends up playing into not just her identity but also the way that she approaches certain like visions and things she starts seeing later into the series.
Right, exactly. Like the mestizo thing is actually like probably the most important element, but obviously like
actual shamanistic aspects come up later.
Yes, exactly. So that's the thing. So she begins to see reality as where she is sort of untethered in the sense that she simultaneously exists inside and out of the present moment. And so she begins to experience that, like, I think a good example, and this is the thing, is it really hits in episode 2 that this is what's going on. In episode 2, there's a scene where you see what looks like a nurse walking out of the room. And she says, "No, I'm good, thank you, sir." And then she begins talking to David Diggs' character, Twende, who is her boss. And she says to him, like, yo, isn't it kind of fucked up that my boyfriend doesn't come to see me? And he's like, he was just here. And then there's this sort of weird cyclical moment in which she experiences her boyfriend coming in to see her and saying hello. And then as he leaves, it basically replays the previous moment in which she thought he was a nurse. And then it comes back to Twende coming in. And she's like, wait, so that was him? And he goes, yeah, that was Sam. And she's like, but I already did this. And he's like, I don't know what the fuck you mean.
I think that the broadest way to approach it is that, like, it's not quite like how you have, like, say and this is the thing, because I'm quite the sucker for certain movies like Groundhog Day or Happy Death Day or similar stuff like that, where it has this weird kind of time travel aspect to it, wherein the character generally, like, they're usually pretty rough around the edges, and they have to learn how to try to reconcile and become a better person to be able to get through this whole thing of repeating the same thing over and over again. It's not quite as cut and dry as that, because
no, certainly not.
Yeah. I would say that the biggest difference is that she's able to recognize that there are certain visual cues that she can see in these visions or in these relive scenarios that she's encountering. But the whole thing that's different about it is that her father is there essentially almost as like kind of a spirit guide thing, also telling her how to hone this talent that apparently has been a generational thing from both her father's mother, him, and then now her, Alma, who's I believe the oldest of the two daughters that are in their family.
Yes.
So I think what we should do is just approach like each of the characters, because all their stories, like, they're a family, so obviously they're going to be intertwined.
So your main character again is Alma. So Tracy and I both I think have sort of a what I would call like a kind of love-hate relationship with her.
Yeah.
For me, here's the thing: is I feel like one, literally, I remember I was rewatching the first episode and I was like, God, this is so very obviously the same showrunners as Bojack Horseman.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've got a penchant for taking kind of asshole characters and trying to find something to relate to or empathize with them about, but you don't necessarily have to like them.
No, but what
it's very difficult to like Alma sometimes, as Bojack Horseman too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think in some ways she is kind of the Bojack Horseman character in the sense of, like, she is kind of a huge bitch. She is kind of a terrible person, but there are definitely, like, kind of moments in which she's trying to be better, and we can see that, like, she actually actively does want to be better, and it's kind of a matter of her getting out of her own way, and we see, like, throughout the season that she does kind of learn to do that, and the moments in which she actually does get out of her own way, where she just is in the moment trying to be a good whatever sister, partner, daughter, she really does it.
Just a better person in general.
Right, exactly. Like, yeah. I think the one that really does it for me as like a sign of her kind of growth as a character is she talks to the guy who she thought killed her father, and she comes to part of the wedding party late and starts, like, basically screaming at her sister to the point that she mentions her sister cheating on her fiance literally as he's walking up.
Yeah, the whole cheating thing also happened because Alma had goaded her into taking shots, so, like, it's indirectly her fault.
Alma absolutely, like, kind of fed that on.
Yeah.
So that's obviously important, but she realizes, like, immediately that it's not okay, and so her perception of it is that rewinds time, basically, and she's back in the moment coming in late and says, like, listen, I'm sorry, I'm being really selfish right now. Let's do this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and it's this...
like, her actually being more actively encouraging and supportive.
Right.
Because, like, there's a couple of moments in this where I'm just be like, I just want her to, like, to not. Like, in one of the first instances I could think is that one of the earlier episodes involves her going to a dinner party, like, basically kind of an engagement party with her boyfriend, Sam. And she arrives there, like, they're both, like, trying to, like, dress up and everything. And then once she comes to the door, her mother, Camilla, opens it and notices that she's drawn on a fake mustache, and I'm just be like, pick and choose your battles, Alma. Like, for God's sake, please stop trying to, like, do certain shit to make it about you. It's just, like, I understand that, like, there's some stuff that's tied to her and that she has her own trauma, but it's just, like, this is your sister. Please don't ruin it for her. You know, like, it's, like, just, like, minute stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, this is, like, so Tracy and I were talking about this a lot yesterday when we were both rewatching it.
Yeah.
The struggle for Alma, especially at the beginning, is this kind of like existentialist, bordering on nihilist view of the world that like it's so boring just to be a person in the world. And I think so much of her journey really is kind of learning to an extent, kind of to be okay with it, to not be weighed down by the idea that like, oh, life is so mundane and all this kind of existentialist bullshit, right? Like, so the moment that sticks out to me is particularly so in the beginning of the episode, she's talking about, or the beginning of the season, sorry, she's talking about literally staring at two almost identical cans of beans and being like, this is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever done in my life. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
But then at the very end of the season, she's sitting there talking with her sister, and she's like, you know, I want something like amazing to happen. And we take this moment where Becca, her sister, is just describing, well, we're literally watching a sunrise in Mexico, standing on literally the ruins of our ancestors. What in the world could possibly be cooler than this particular moment? And Alma kind of is like, yeah, you're right. I can't ignore that this is a beautiful moment, right?
And that is in very stark contrast to... I do want to mention this because...
Sure.
I think that's in stark contrast to the way that her father had approached certain things, because we get to meet him as a character, but he has this vaguely... And I don't want to use this term in the podcast, but I will. He has this vaguely Randian, exceptionalist approach to doing stuff wherein he... No, like, honestly, because it's like him and fucking Brad Bird. I don't understand why, but him and Brad Bird both have this thing about like, if you're truly special, you should be doing these things and like using your gift. But at the same time, it's both hazardous and dangerous for Alma to keep switching between different planes of like, I guess, consciousness technically. But her father is still fundamentally trying to use her as a tool to facilitate things for him. So there's always this kind of like tinge of selfish intent based on it on his part, even if he is bonding with her.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so I think we should start like moving towards talking about her father, but I think her father is a good representative of just that, right? The nihilist existentialism thing, kind of like pulling her away, right? Whereas
she has the passion for like I think she does have some genuine curiosity towards the world that becomes harnessed once she's with her dad, but she's also very practical and
cynical.
Yeah, she's very practical and cynical, kind of like her mother. So so we see both aspects of those in her character.
Yeah, so I think her cynicism inside of the show often manifests as, again, that sort of existentialism.
Yeah, where both the older that Robin and I get, the less time we have to put up with that kind of shit.
I'm just like,
it's just, I mean, it's a very easy way to look at life to me. It's a very like, well, if nothing matters, then what's the point of doing anything? I think that that's bullshit. I think that your job or your obligation to how you want to live your life is by forging that meaning for yourself. Like you have to find stuff that appeals to you and do that. That's not murdering people.
Oh yeah. Well, and there's a lot we can sort of go into there, but so her father is like representative of pulling her away from kind of like mundane life in some way. And there's a moment in, I think it's episode 6,
something like that. Yeah,
I think it's 6, or I think it's 6, because isn't 6? No, maybe it's
just get to the point. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, it's important to me.
Okay, then figure out what the episode's name is.
I'm pretty sure it's 4.
Merry Christmas. Don't attack me because you don't know what it is.
What's going on right now? Okay.
Oh, both of our brains are oatmeal. That's what's going on.
Oh, there it is. So moving the keys. There's this whole thing with moving the keys. Anywho, there's a moment in which she's talking to her boyfriend Sam, and she's talking to her father. And to me, it's kind of the crux of the show in some ways, of her boyfriend is asking her, like, please just let me in, let me help you, we're in this together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, you have her father being like, can't we just leave this all behind and just do amazing things together? I don't know. That moment to me is like super huge in this series.
Yeah. Well, also because Alma has already had a tendency to push stuff down and not mention it in general. Like, she's clearly got a lot of repression going on.
Right. And so this moment of her like accepting Sam's help is like huge, right?
Oh yeah.
And absolutely. So she lets him into that whole thing, which, we can talk about a lot of things there, but that sort of thing. And so let's talk a little bit more about her dad, since we're talking about that moment. So her father, Jacob Winograd, is like a professor and researcher, or was a professor and researcher of theoretical physics.
Mm-hmm.
And he is really interested in basically research on perception of reality as it relates to like quantum physics, right?
Yeah.
And so he becomes inspired by learning about, somewhat interestingly, learning more about his wife's, the native side of her heritage, and thinking about his own mother, who he thinks was a lot like Alma in that she perceived reality in a different way, but because there was no one to sort of guide her, she was just misunderstood as crazy.
Well, and also in her formative years, Alma had developed a hearing disability. I think it was, I think she was roughly like 4 or 5, something like that.
She was 3 and she got pneumonia.
Yeah, that's right. She had hearing loss due to pneumonia. And at that point, her parents had taken her to a school for the deaf or for the hard of hearing. And it does seem that she actually did flourish there quite a bit, like in terms of making a community. But eventually, once she reached, I think it was probably a little bit just before that particular year for Halloween, she had gotten a cochlear implant. So she would be taken into a different school and taken out of that comfort zone. So she's always seen, like, you know, as an adult, she's constantly putting the cochlear implant on, or sometimes that's what makes her world so disorienting, is that she either doesn't have it on, or there are some kinds of like auditory issues in the world that she's experiencing when she's out of the real world.
If she doesn't have her aid in.
Yeah,
and I think that's also an important moment, but I think I just want to pause to say I love that she is deaf for some reason. I don't know. It's really cool to see a deaf character in a show.
Yeah, man, can't really recall any time that there's ever been a deaf main character of any series.
No, yeah, the closest I can think of is A Silent Voice.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but that was a film too, so that's like, especially like since this is a series that's marketed towards adults, like not just like an anime series or whatever, not to diminish it. But yeah, and also noting that the animation style of this, which is rotoscoping, which is not the easiest animation style to get into. It can be very disorienting for some people, which I understand. But I think it totally works in terms of the tone that they're trying to go for with this show.
Yeah, well, I think there are definitely some moments, like I think we've talked about this before, like doing mundane stuff animated is such a tricky thing. And obviously they're not doing that here realistically, but I think some of the ways in which they use the medium to do something really interesting is just super cool. Ultimately, what we find out is that her dad has been doing brain scans on people, trying to understand like ventricles in their brains and how that relates to sort of perception of reality. He died in an accident the Halloween night of that year, and all that he or Alma knows about it is that he got a call to go to his work on Halloween night while he took her out for a second round of trick-or-treating.
Yeah, the call was from his research assistant Farnaz, who was also studying under him.
Exactly.
Oh, and she had also died in that accident as well.
Yes, exactly. What we ultimately find out, and this is like the big spoiler.
Yeah.
So again, this is your last chance to get off the boat.
I mean, if you're still on at this point, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
I mean, like, then we assume that you're okay with it.
Take
so.
The wheel. But so
thanks, Carrie Underwood.
No problem. Always got your back. Bing. What we find out is that the person who broke into his lab was actually his wife, and that she is angry at him for having experimented on their daughter, which valid. 1,000,000%.
Yeah, totally valid.
That's actually one of my like favorite / least favorite moments. Camilla confronts Jacob because Alma, as a child, said that she had a dream where her dad hooked her up to a bunch of wires like a Frankenstein monster.
Yikes.
And
which is always a great comparison you want to hear as a parent.
Yeah. Well, and he tries to like brush it off and say that was a dream. And then the present day Alma talking to her dead father, watching the scene, she's like, that wasn't a dream, was it? And he's like, well, everything's kind of a dream. And she's like...
Classic douchebag response.
Yeah.
It's like, I like to think that I'm a student of life. Like, okay, fuck you. And also, did you experiment on me?
Yeah, right. So, like, it's a funny moment to me just because it's very much him being on his bullshit, but also, like, the immediate call out of it. And you're like, ah, man. So what happens is Camilla, after like fucking up the lab and arguing with Jacob, breaks it off and is like, listen, we're done. You cannot come home. You cannot do it because I've been lying to myself. You've been lying to me and I can't do it. And she leaves in tears, which is like such a powerful moment for me. But
yeah,
then he says, all right, Farnaz, I'll give you a ride home. And this is after Farnaz says, well, I'm going to have to report you because if it's ever found out that we were conducting what would actually be an illegal experiment, because we do not have the express consent of both parents for the experimentation on a child subject, I'm going to have to report you. And so Jacob, while driving her home, drives them off a cliff because essentially he's depressed.
Yeah, I mean, he's depressed, he's disgraced, and he feels like he's lost everything. And technically he has, but it's also entirely his fault. He didn't have to keep doing all this kind of stuff like that. He wanted to die because his pride was injured that gravely. Because he's like, oh no, consequences, and then veers off the cliff.
And it's that. I actually have a clear memory of this because it's wild, but literally watching it the first time and now earlier watching it the second time, when you realize what's happening, that he did this on purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Both times I'm like, Jacob, fuck you. Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Like, I don't ever think it's the right call, right? But the sheer and simple fact that he's bringing another person into that is so fucked. And that's when then we have this moment where he's like, well, we can't fix this. Look at what a terrible person I am. Look at what I did. This is also one of those moments that just, to me, solidifies sort of the difference between a character like Bojack and a character like Alma, right? Mm-hmm. Is Alma in this moment is like, just because you made a mistake doesn't mean that you're a fundamentally bad person. You can be more than the mistakes you make. But so that's her point, is she's like, listen, if we can fix this, then you come back we realign the timelines, and then you just stop being a shithead. Right? Like,
it's important to note because there's a very similar kind of growth trajectory with him from the instant that he is reintroduced into Alma. Like, once you start seeing him as a vision, is that initially he is intensely process driven in terms of like, okay, we need to do this thing, we need to do that. Like, not yielding that, like, Alma has other stuff to take care of too. Like, she has obligations to do stuff with her sister relating to the engagement. Or like, he basically tries to take her away from the wedding so that they can get some other stuff done. And I'd just be like, could you not? Like, it's just, you know, I mean, it's like he starts to like see any obligation or need to be there for others because he gets so driven by his own goal. Like, and this is the thing I put down in my notes is that if you're familiar with Gravity Falls, listener, or Robin, I know that you are, his character sometimes reminded me of Ford, which is Stan Pines' brother, where it's like he is brilliant and he's, you know, like there's something charming about him and like he seems like he's a naturally engaging person, but it's that they both let their egos dictate what they want to do and dictate not factoring in the consequences for their loved ones. That becomes a serious hindrance to their growth as people. But eventually they do learn from it, you know. But I think that's the thing, is that their pride is the thing that keeps putting them in that position. So,
well, yeah, right. That's the greatest of the seven. It's the strongest and most deadly of the seven deadly sins.
Yeah, I think like between like that, I think like between that and greed, because greed can be exacerbated by all of the other sins too. So, yeah, but I think that's the thing, is that I have, like, initially watching the show, I found it very difficult to want to trust or relate in Alma's father, Jacob, because it just seemed like there's just something about him that just seemed like way too sketchy.
You're right. He's very insistent at the beginning, and it takes some time for him to be kind of like a good dad again. Yeah,
well, I mean, like, mostly Alma's just freaking the fuck out because she doesn't know what's real life and what's not.
Yeah.
We see this later in the series with Camilla just basically not wanting Alma to really have anything to do with her father at that point, or at least like having issues wanting to hear about Alma not being able to differentiate between real life and what she's hallucinating, I guess. Like, because she's secretly worried about losing Alma the same way that she lost
her husband, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because Camilla she does come across as kind of guarded and somewhat secretive initially, which is why she and her mother have an antagonistic relationship initially. But it's done out of protection for the most part. She's never doing anything deliberately malicious towards Alma.
No. But
she fundamentally wants to help her.
So she's definitely she's a good example of the overprotective mother, right? Because she does want to help, but the problem is her method of going about that is sometimes a little too sort of sidewindy, or it's borderline deceptive, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, so consent isn't the biggest thing with her. Like, she does
No,
steal
and
the slip from the psychiatrist to get the antipsychotic medication for Alma.
Yeah.
Which she does not take.
It's really well done, actually,
mm-hmm.
and really well written. I just really like that. And let's talk about Camilla a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So Camilla is the mother of this family. She's the matriarch. And as we talked about, she ultimately breaks the relationship with Jacob Winograd and just is taking care of the girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that makes her interesting and somewhat troublesome is, maybe not troublesome, but one of the interesting things that I think is very difficult in this is, so Alma, as we know, as we mentioned, is deaf. And there's a scene where she is talking to both her parents and they're trying to talk to her about getting the implant. We're getting it from Alma's perspective, so she's just reading their lips and getting bits and pieces, but basically Jacob is trying to be like, listen, if you want the implant, we'll give it to you. We will get it, and that's fine. And the mother is pushing, no, you need to get the implant. It's going to make all our lives easier, blah, blah, blah. Again, so this is like an interesting moment for me, is like, she's like, I want to be able to talk to my daughter again, and the husband is arguing, well, then just learn sign language. And she's
ASL,
like,
yeah.
What kills me is, and she's right, like, well, you can just learn sign language, but you can't bother to learn Spanish so I can speak to our daughters in their in my native tongue. Like, we can't do that. I think that's a good example of how, like, Jacob is such a sort of, like, one-sided character in the sense of, like, it's about what he wants.
Yeah, his priorities are extremely skewed in his favor.
Yeah.
Like, they always have been.
Yeah. But Camilla is still, like, ultimately interested in maintaining a relationship with their daughter.
Yeah, I think she genuinely does want to improve her quality of life too, and she believes the cochlear implant will do that, and which is fair.
Yeah. The other thing we find out about Camilla that's really cool in one of the episodes is that she actually helps. She has like a very strong relationship and community sort of inside of her church.
Mm-hmm.
Like we see her speaking to several people and like helping out one woman who's pregnant or talking to another who is like, oh, I'm doing Weight Watchers. And she's like, you don't need that. You're beautiful. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
I think she enjoys being needed. She enjoys being involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But she also, like, I mean, to an extent, I think that she likes helping people, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's for, sort of selfish reasons.
Yeah. If it's benefiting the rest of the community simultaneously, then, there's nothing wrong with that either. Also because, like, both of her daughters are grown up. Like, her youngest daughter, Becca, is getting married, and Alma exists. So she wants to be involved with both of them.
Right, but she also doesn't have to take care of them anymore in the same way because they're adults.
Yeah, she's not obligated to clean up their messes.
Right. That's maybe the struggle for her characters, that she knows she isn't at that point anymore, but she's fighting the urge to still be that person for them.
I think that's standard with a lot of parents, to be honest, though.
Yeah.
Especially depending on, like, the background, too. That could have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, well, and family is obviously, like, huge for Latinx families.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a way that it isn't as much for, like, white Americans.
Yeah. I think from here we should probably talk about Becca because, like, her storyline is very tied into Alma's boyfriend, Sam, as well. And also everything.
Yeah. As we talked about, Becca is getting married, and Tracy, why don't you take over?
Sure. So Becca is Alma's younger sister. I'm not exactly sure about the time difference, but I would say probably at least 2 years or so.
Yeah, I think 1 to 2 years is...
The beginning of the series itself actually starts off with Alma meeting Becca at a bar, showing off her engagement ring, talking about, like her being excited for stuff. Like, Becca has a very big drive to try to look for the positivity and she's very much like the go-getter kind of type. At least she tries to be. Like, there is still some kind of like lingering insecurity things there, which Alma can exacerbate too. But I think she's fundamentally trying to do the best that she can.
I really think that Becca is kind of like the plucky optimist, like, and doing so very sort of intentionally.
Absolutely.
Which is, good, and I like and appreciate it from her.
I think it's an important balance between her and Alma too, because Alma is a lot more cynical and grounded in that regard. But Becca is just actively trying to make sure that she can, like, be there to help Alma if she needs assistance with something, but Alma is generally the one to just shy away or not mention stuff or deflect or joke about something. So, and I think that Becca fundamentally, she's the one that will try to like prod her to like make sure she can do whatever she can to help her. Like not in an overbearing kind of way, but just like, if you've got a sibling that you're relatively close to, just be like, you'll usually know how to just be like, look, I'm genuinely worried about you. I don't know what exactly I can do to help you, but I want to. But she also wants to enjoy her wedding, and it doesn't really help it when Alma trivializes a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Especially Becca's fiance, Reed, who is fine. I mean, he's fine. We barely get to see him. Maybe that's deliberate. I don't know.
I definitely think it's deliberate. I think the point of Reed is that he is, for better or worse, I think he is kind of what Alma says he is. But that's, it very much feels to me like Becca wants the stability of marriage, right? And so she goes for Reed because she knows in a number of ways he would provide that because he is very stable. He's also, unfortunately, super boring.
Yeah, he's super boring. He's very traditional, and his family is so waspy, it's like not even funny. But
man, rewatching
the scene where they're trying all the artisanal mustards, I'm like, you don't genuinely care about this, do you?
Oh, I'm with Sam. Once you get that deep down the mustard hole, you're getting into some tasty shit, and I'm in.
We are going into the mustard hole.
That's all my life ever wanted, honestly.
I mean, yeah. Well, but it's also that. Ew. But I think it's just also that Reed's family is very stereotypical, just like a standard like rich white family.
No, yeah, you're
his family is
right.
taking care of the wedding arrangements and stuff like that. Like both arranging everything and paying for it, because like Alma's family, they're not terribly wealthy, or especially
that's
not
kind of
after her father died.
But also like I mean, yeah, that's definitely part of it, I think.
Yeah.
I also just like rewatching the scene where they're doing that. And Reed's mother is like, well, there's a lot of things about this marriage that aren't traditional. They have like a bunch of mustards and blah, blah. And I'm like, is this like a race thing? Are you racist or are you just a bitch?
Yeah, that's the thing about Reed's mom is that like she's got this always kind of like lingering, I might be racist, but I might be classist. So you don't really know what you're going to get with her. Yeah.
It's what it makes me think of is that joke in, Accepted, where he's like, like this whole vibe you guys have got here, like it's kind of a little racist, but like under the rug, you're not talking about it. It's good.
We don't make a big deal out of it. Like we're not going to be putting it on our flag, but it's kind of there.
But,
we don't
buy
certain food,
in
but
the house.
I think that at the very least, like her relationship with Reed does seem to be like reasonably genuine. It's just that whole lingering thing of from the first scene that we see them together in the bar when they start doing shots or having drinks. Alma basically just keeps goading the bartender to like try to like basically hook up with her sister. Like eventually they all drink so much that they all go back to Alma's. I'm not sure if I think it's a house.
It's a house.
Like whatever house she's. Yeah, like they go back to the house that Alma's living in with her boyfriend Sam, and they're all doing truth or dare, and I think they all have their tops off, or like that was like the dare right. Is that like it was something like that. But then eventually Becca ends up having an affair with that bartender, not once but twice, before the wedding thing itself, and it's just I don't know, like that was kind of where I lost some of my relatability for her, but I don't know. I mean, like that's the thing is that there are no perfect people within this thing,
but again,
and I'm not condoning that kind of stuff before.
Yeah, but I think the show does a good job of being like, again, I think one of the things I love about this show is the way it handles its characters with a kind of care of like, yes, you did a bad thing, but that doesn't make you sort of fundamentally bad, right? What would be bad is if you did this bad thing and you didn't even feel any fucking remorse for it, right? Then you'd be a piece of garbage.
Or continue to do the thing.
Yes, and it's about not doing the thing.
Yeah, and I think that happens with all of these characters, that there's all these like pivotal moments of where they have to own to a mistake that they had done. Like just like some things where it's like there's some kind of breach of trust, or something had happened to one of the, like between them and someone else, and they have to acknowledge it. And also because Sam witnesses her going back to apologize to the bartender later. And she basically says, like, look, if you don't tell Reed about what's going on here, then I won't tell Alma that you guys have technically broken up. Because while Alma was in her coma, we totally forgot to mention about the whole car accident leading to the coma thing.
It's amazing
we totally did. I'm so sorry.
We're this deep in and we don't even talk about that. So I do. Okay, so
Well, let's go ahead and take that time to talk about Sam too, because we just kind of transitioned there anyway.
Yeah, so let's back up a little bit. So the inciting incident, she starts seeing her father right before she has a car accident, which kicks her into a coma for like 2 weeks. What had happened the night before that is she had broken up with Sam, her boyfriend who she lives with, and then while she was in a coma, he basically moved back in because she actually didn't remember them being broken up. She kind of forgot that part. I like Sam a lot. He's probably my favorite character.
He's pretty solid. Between him and Becca, they're my favorites.
Yeah, I think I warmed up more on a second viewing to Becca. I think I was a little like lukewarm on her initially.
Yeah, she can be a little much, especially on the first turn.
So that's kind of the thing, right? Is we have this like thing between Sam and Becca where they both are keeping each other's secrets basically as like a Mexican standoff. Like basically,
for lack of a better term.
There probably is a better term. Really, they're just both blackmailing each other into not fucking with each other.
Yeah.
His whole sort of deal is that he is, for better or worse, like deeply in love with Alma in the way that she's not okay with because of her whole like existentialist thing.
Well, she's also just got so many hangups because she thinks that if she does go a traditional route of settling down, getting married, having kids and stuff, that she's going to go insane eventually, like her father's mother did. But like, which is not necessarily the case, but it's just the fact that she's basically saying emphatically that she does not want to have anything more serious than what they're currently doing, which is, I mean, fair. And she does give him a couple moments where she's like, look, if I can't give you what you want, then no big deal. We don't have to continue with this anymore.
Right.
She attempts to be understanding about it, even if it's not fundamentally what he wants.
Yeah, but I think also, like, yeah, I really like their relationship. And
yeah, I mean, he does call her on her shit quite a fair amount, which I appreciate.
He does.
She needs to hear it.
Yeah, but they also, like, it. You see in one episode, we're seeing both her childhood and some of his childhood and the struggles they both.
Yeah, they're playing in tandem.
Yeah, and you're like, God, of course they get along so well. Like, they have very similar kind of backgrounds in terms of having to leave people that they really liked for reasons they don't quite understand, having to like learn how to sort of fit in, right? These are both struggles they've had.
And like adapting to new environments too, especially the school environment. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so well done.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite my favorite segment out of all of it was like watching Sam emigrating from India and then speaking with a Tamil accent, and then he's getting bullied for it, and then him trying to change his dialect to blend in more.
Sitting in his room,
I mean, it's so like
a tape recorder and repeating after it.
It's so sad, but at the same time, it's like it's so relatable because there were so many kids that I remember like growing up that they would do the same kind of thing too. Like just in America itself, or like I guess like a lot of Western societies, there is this big push to try to assimilate in many ways, and a lot of that involves around language and tone of voice. That has happened quite a bit, especially growing up, especially at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I really enjoy about Sam is how they have like very well intersecting senses of humor, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the thing, honest to God, the thing that endeared me to Alma at the beginning was when she climbs into the bed and just starts humping him. He's just like, what are you doing? I'm humping your butt.
Dude, that's like every person I'm friends with.
Yeah, I'm just
in general. We've got some very hump-friendly friends, like just in general.
Well, so
clothes on, but
yes,
it's still there. It's the consistency I can set a watch to.
Yes, so it's that moment, and then later when they're lying in bed, and he's just like, starts feeling her face, and he's like, I'm looking for my glasses. You don't wear glasses. It's like, maybe they're here, and honks one of her boobs.
It's great.
Like, that's really good. It's just really cute to me.
Oh, yeah. They have a very believable relationship.
Yeah, and he's so supportive, and that's in some ways the struggle for him, is he wants to be supportive of her while she says things that are just impossible, right?
She deliberately keeps him at arm's length. But it's a self-preservation thing for her, but at the same time, she has to genuinely be able to accept help or be willing to allow someone else to intervene or help out.
Yeah, well, and she does let him in, right?
It takes her a bit, but she does get there.
Right, exactly. And so he does become part of the whole thing, and that he like is aware of what she's trying to do, aware of how she's perceiving things, and even if he doesn't understand it, he still wants to help, right? And that obviously, like, the end of that is that he calls the mother to try and get her into what is realistically like an asylum or something. Asylum might not be the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, like basically like being in some kind of assisted living thing, requiring medication, stuff like that.
Yes,
for regulating it.
Right, because as we mentioned, they do get medication for her, but she never does it. She never takes it.
Yeah, because there's an instance where she goes to a psychiatrist who believes that she has PTSD, which is very, honestly, probably very accurate because she was pretty much abandoned by her dad at the age of like 10, 9, whatever it was, just like left there on the street. Yeah, like that entire flashback is like, no, that would make complete sense. Like how she would have just internalized that from, know, the get-go.
Well, and also, that's where it like kind of incites for some of the other characters, but I feel like she's not really bothered by it, but that accident was intense. I'm sure I watched it within the last year because it's only from 2019, but I'm glad I didn't watch this almost exactly a year ago after I was in an accident where I was also hit on the driver's side.
Yikes. I forgot that happened.
That was last year. Isn't that wild?
That is nuts.
It's been a year.
I forgot that happened.
Mm-hmm. So that...
Well, we're all glad that you're good.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. My instance, I walked away from that. It was wild.
You were very, very lucky.
Yeah. So, but that's the sort of recent trauma I think that a lot of the characters are focusing on, but there's obviously the longer lasting trauma of her father more or less abandoning her because there's no way she could have perceived it as anything else than that.
Whenever she's talking to her dad during the visions that she's having of him, she calls him on that kind of stuff immediately. And her father always has some kind of way of defending himself or reframing things. And he's just kind of this endless well of bad advice because everything is based around his perspective. Like, he really does truly have a lot of issues empathizing with her as an adult, or at least trying to reconcile that she has a lot of animosity or resentment towards him for the way that he shouldn't have left her there trick-or-treating by herself when she was 10. What the fuck, dude?
Right.
Like, I was like, I don't care who you are. Like, take her with you, or, just, don't just leave her there. What the fuck?
Honestly, actually, if he had brought her with, I wonder how that would have panned out, because I think
they probably would have been fine. I mean, she may have still been traumatized if Camilla's just like, how dare you take her without like letting me know what was going on. Like, she might have still divorced him at that time, but at least she wouldn't have thought her dad had just like died or been murdered by someone.
Yeah, but that's like,
I mean, it is like kind of a hindsight thing, but
yeah, but I think it would be,
but the same, like, why would the fuck would you bring your daughter with you? What the fuck's wrong with you? Come on.
She's an idiot in some ways. He's a very smart idiot.
Yeah, he's a very pretentious idiot.
Sure. But so that's sort of all the characters. Where it ends is, so she goes back in the final episode, she goes back in time and learns the true circumstances of her father's death. She brings them back to the moment he gets the phone call, and we see a moment in which he ignores it. He goes, it's Halloween night and I'm with my daughter and we got a bunch of candy to get, so we're gonna get some candy. This is where, like, I think that it really tries to, like, instill the doubt is, even though she's changed this, she won't, it's not the, I love the joke, but it's not the Back to the Future thing where it immediately switches, because time travel works different for white people, I guess. So that was so funny, I died.
Sure.
Well, that was, because, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was just really funny to me. So she goes to a specific place where she will theoretically meet her dad and the timelines will realign and things will change suddenly. And so she goes to do that. He doesn't appear when she thinks he's going to, but that ends with us just seeing her staring at the cave. And that just ends.
Yeah, it's got this vaguely ambiguous, but at the same time, like, you kind of get the impression that she's seeing him because she's got this very kind of mildly astonished look thing. I don't know.
It's a little like the ending of Birdman in that until she looks up and smiles, We're not sure, but we have a very... You can kind of impress upon it what you want, but I think that...
The impression that they're trying to give you is that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
And, I did want to note that most of this story is actually semi-autobiographical based on Kate Purdy, who is the head writer and producer.
Mm-hmm.
The show is based in San Antonio, and she grew up in San Antonio back in the day. They had lived in Guadalajara for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Her father was a Spanish teacher, so hence there's some overlap thing there already.
Sure.
But apparently she was having bouts of depression and anxiety attacks while working as a writer for the show Cougar Town, which I vaguely remember coming out. I have never seen it, but I do remember that was the thing. So she was worried that there might be some kind of history of schizophrenia that she could get because of past history with some relatives, like
her grandmother and her 2 great uncles.
Yeah, 2 granduncles. But apparently she had found some indigenous and Ayurvedic medicines that did work for her. So hence why the Aztec shamans become more of a recurring motif throughout the entire production.
Yeah, the whole native culture aspect of Alma that kind of recurs throughout, right, is important for that reason. And I agree, I really dig that. Like, knowing that information about one of the head writers, it clarifies a lot of the narrative for me.
For sure. And I do think that it's respectfully done as well. There's no, like, exoticism, really. It's just kind of like, I mean, I do love the one scene where she's heading down to the reception for her sister's wedding, and there's just one of the performers is just sharing the elevator with her. Where it's like, at first you're just like, oh, is she tripping out? And it's like, no, actually, there's another room where they have indigenous dancers performing. So just like, wow, what are the odds? Like, thank God they had 2 spare ballrooms available the same night.
Hey, man, there are some hotels that have several ballrooms.
Oh, no, I'm aware.
We invaded one once.
We did.
Yeah, it was
We
a lot
did
of fun.
do that. It was a great time. But yeah, like, I overall, I would say this series, like, well, number one, there's only 8 episodes. So it's very easy to get into. I would say I would split it up between 4 episodes and another 4 episodes because the script is so dense in terms of story. Like, there's just so much packed into every single episode, and each one's only 22 minutes that I think it's good to have a breather between all of them. You could binge them if you want. I don't recommend it. I would give yourself a little bit of a break between the 2 of them. But it is easily available on Amazon Prime if you do want to check it out. And I feel like you should. It's an interesting story with a character who's she's not terribly likable at the beginning, but you do come to, like, understand and want to see her journey.
Yeah, agreed. And she does become very likable. And again, like, the fact that we see her grow and the way that she is, again, this kind of, like, deeply kind person underneath her sort of layers of cynicism and existentialist garbage makes her a really enjoyable character, ultimately.
Yeah, and I do like that we're getting a season 2. It was confirmed in November of 2019. So what I'm wondering is that, you know, like, because obviously we've had the pandemic going on this year, but if they were confirmed in 2019, what I want to know is, did they film everything that they had already and now they're just rotoscoping? Because I'm not sure what kind of timeline there's going to be in terms of when the next season will be out. I'm hopeful that it will be spring of next year, maybe summer of next year, who knows?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if it's going to be a longer run than this particular one or if there's any, like, other issues, but I haven't seen any, like, frequent time updates.
Yeah, I haven't heard much about season 2. Actually,
I mean, look, it's been a busy year.
Yes,
I'm sure there's other shit going on.
It's been a busy week, so.
Yep. I mean, like, yeah, this week alone in general, it's just.
It's been 5 years.
Yep. It's been 84 years.
Yup. That's what it feels like. So.
Oh. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we should probably. How about we just get into what we watched? Because I don't. I would just say definitely check this series out. It's pretty solid. I had a great time with it. Oh, also, it has some of the most beautiful backgrounds I've ever seen because it has, like, there's a contrast between you get some 3D aspects, like, in terms of, like, there are some environments that you can tell are made with CGI, but a lot of the backgrounds look like very gouache painted. So they're extremely beautiful. Like, I love looking at the backgrounds in this. Like, every time that they had a new establishing shot, I'm like, oh, that's really pretty. And I like that. I really appreciate the attention to detail that they put into it. And I'm sure that they had a whole lot of reference from San Antonio as well.
Me every time Alma is on screen. Oh, wow, that's really pretty.
Yeah. She was the main character in Alita Battle Angel, which I saw not terribly long ago.
Nice. All right. So what are you watching, Trey?
Oh, God. I've been... Okay. So recently I have been watching more What We Do in the Shadows because Kent had not seen some of it for a while. I had already seen all of the second season because I totally forgot that they aired it earlier this year. I think in, like, April or May, something like that. But I rewatched it. I love that show. It just cracks me up. I really want more. It's so funny. I just can't get over like all the characters are so well rounded and interesting and gross. But I just love them all. I saw this extremely weird show called Sassy Justice with Fred Sassy, which is made by Matt and Trey from South Park, as well as Peter Serafinowicz, who is a British comedian. Mm-hmm. And what it is that it's a
deep fake video.
Yeah, it's done with deep fakes, featuring like the main character. Just he has a face that looks like Trump, but just in like a worse wig, which is, I believe, it's just supposed to be Peter Serafinowicz, just as his body double. They've got a character that looks like Mark Zuckerberg that is trying to apparently he's the corrupt owner of a dialysis center in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It's so fucking weird. It's
actually really funny. It's also
I really liked it, but it's so fucking weird, especially if you are weirded out by the concept of deep fakes. But I would still check it out.
Yeah, I'm actually like thinking of showing it to students in the future because it is well, because here's the thing, right? Like, it is kind of like pointing out how fucking wild deepfakes are and how they're only going to be more ridiculous in the future. And we're going to reach a no-return point at which, like, you can literally just fabricate anyone saying anything.
Yeah, or, like, what I'm really hoping that does not happen is that the entertainment industry starts using it to, like, do, like, concerts where Freddie Mercury is back from the dead, like what they did with the whole Tupac hologram thing.
Oh, yeah, no.
But they can actually, like, just map out his entire face to make it seem like he's still there. And I'm like, guys, he's dead. Stop it. Like, stop trying to reanimate corpses. I'm sick and tired of this shit. Like, I think that's the weirdest thing about it is that, like, it looks kind of shitty, but it's also extremely well done. Like, it's very, very weird.
The one that you really have to pay attention to is the moment with Michael Caine.
Oh, yeah, Michael Caine. Yeah. Peter Serafinowicz is a master impersonator. Like, he's incredible at doing impressions. And, like, that was him doing Michael Caine, him doing the voice for Fred Sassy. Like, it's all... And also him doing his Trump voice, too.
Was it
And it's just, like...
Sassy?
Yes, that was him. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was one of the Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
No, Matt Stone and like Trey was just the guy that was doing the terrible Tom Cruise puppet. Like they have a couple scenes where you can just see that he's just kind of slightly off the screen, or you can like see him mouthing the words. It's great.
Yeah, it's very funny. I would definitely recommend watching
I loved it. What about you, Robin? What have you been watching?
I haven't been watching a whole lot lately. Honestly. My roommate watched Dragon's Dogma, an anime based on a video game of the same name, and that was in some ways wild because it literally just point by point follows the plot of the video game. Also, every episode is named after one of the 7 deadly sins, and that's a little, like, painfully ham-fisted.
So there's only 7 episodes?
There are 7 episodes. Each one is named after a sin. I think Wrath is the first, Pride is the last.
How long are they?
I think they're half hour. I could be wrong.
That's a short series.
It's very short, but it is it's nutty. It's worth a watch if you're into it.
Cool. Anything else?
No, that's kind of been it lately. I'm kind of adrift for new media to latch onto right now. I've just been playing a lot of Final Fantasy.
I have noticed that. That's most of your tour has just been like, man, I really just want to play Final Fantasy though.
Don't call me out like this. Man. All right.
I'm not calling you out. It's on a public forum.
I'm giving you shit. Jeez. All right.
It's fine.
So.
All right. Well, where can they find you, Robin?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at @lobster_writer. And you can find me on Instagram at @lobsterwriter, where I post mostly my sewing projects and usually my daily tarot readings. Tracy, where do they find you?
Thank you, Robin. They can find me on Twitter and Instagram via @TCTroush. You can find my personal website via www.tracytroush.com. You can also find art. Yeah. You can also find. I do technically still have the show website up on Tumblr, but I wouldn't bother going on there. I haven't updated it in probably a year and a half, so don't bother unless you want to see what it used to look like. In which case, go for it. It's the Wayback Machine, but it's never been updated.
Hey, don't hold me to this. I may return to Tumblr because that's apparently a thing that's happening right now.
Oh fuck, really? Are they bringing the porn bots back so people will go on again?
God, I hope not.
In a way, I want them to, though, because then at least people will still be there.
There's apparently people on there now still, which is wild, but I don't know.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, hey, maybe it's time to come back. Otherwise, if it's easier for you to listen to our episodes on YouTube, you can find them on there. Just look for Not Joanna Eggs Podcast and just look for our little head logo. The episodes are uploaded concurrently when they go up on Libsyn. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much most of it. Let's hope that we're not dead by the time that this airs. Who knows? We got a couple days. So.
Yup. We'll find out. All right. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk at you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks again so much for listening. Our intro music is Don't Hold My Breath by Ben Briggs. The outro is Wet Dreams by Phonetic Hero. Both were found on ocremix.org. If you like the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us, or tell a friend to check us out. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Find the show website via notjoannaeggs.tumblr.com. Follow us on Twitter via @lobster_writer and @TCTrash. Not Joanna Eggs, because animation is for everybody. At the wedding, the drunk wedding guest, that the cheers thing to Alma when she's doing her speech, that's Raphael Bob-Waksburg. I love that they gave him a cameo.
I knew it. As soon as you said it, I knew it was going to be him.
I just love that it's him. But
me too. Well, I love that I'm assuming he's the T.O. Oliver that she makes a joke about.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean,
like,
that would make sense because also he's a white. Well, also he's a white guy and she's half Jewish, so I'm just like that would make sense.
Yeah.
What's up, T.O. Oliver? This guy knows what I'm talking about.